Ladies and gentlemen, we have what they call in Washington, D.C. on the Epstein Files, a jailbreak.
And he said, boys, I'm not turning. I'm headed for a land that's far away.
Hey everyone, I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and a jailbreak in Washington lingo is a vote that is extremely close. You have one party very reluctant to support it. You only have a couple members of that party supporting it, maybe. And then it becomes clear that that piece of legislation is going to pass anyway, and all the members of the party decide, no, we're going to actually vote for this thing. This was a massive jailbreak. A massive jailbreak. You just had a few Republican dissenters initially supporting the so-called discharge petition, a way to get a piece of legislation on the House floor without the Speaker wanting to bring it up. Seemed like they weren't going to succeed. They had to get to 218 votes. Wasn't clear how that was going to happen. Then it became evident, yeah, they're going to succeed. And then you know what happens? Donald Trump, who was at the front of the parade saying, stop, no, you can't do this, turns around and says, I'm leading the parade. I support this too. That creates a massive jailbreak. You have the House voting to release the Epstein Files with only one dissenter, a Republican. I'm going to come back to him in a second. It passes unanimously in the Senate, and President Trump is going to sign this thing. This is a massive victory for Thomas Massie, for Marjorie Taylor Greene, who just planted their feet on this, weren't going to be moved, and ended up reorienting all of Washington around what had been their initially dissenting opinion. So I'm not necessarily a big MTG fan, but congratulations to her on this victory. But I don't want to talk about MTG today. I want to talk about the lone dissenter, a congressman named Clay Higgins from Louisiana. I hadn't paid a lot of attention to him to this point, but one, it requires incredible independence of mind to be one vote against anything, especially something like this, that there was such a popular tide around. But two, I think he was right. I think Clay Higgins, standing against all of official Washington, every elected member of the House and the Senate, and President Trump with a signature, is correct. He posted the reasons he was voting the way he did on X. And what he pointed out is that this violates every standard practice of our criminal justice system. Grand jury material is supposed to be secret, and for good reasons. One, you want witnesses to talk in such investigations, and they'll be less likely to do so if they think their identities might be revealed, what they've said might be revealed, and they might pay a reputational price for it, for better or worse. Two, the way it works in the United States of America is if the government is going to accuse you of a crime, if it thinks it has provable evidence that a jury is going to accept or a judge is going to accept in court, it goes and makes that case. It indicts you, and then it speaks in the courtroom and nothing else. If it doesn't have that evidence, if it just thinks you're a bad person, if it thinks maybe there's some ambiguous evidence that you may have committed a crime, it doesn't do anything about it. It doesn't malign you. It doesn't tell people what you might have done. It doesn't tell people why maybe it's suspicious of you. It either indicts you and prosecutes you or shuts up. And this has to do with the core American ethic of innocent until proven guilty. So our government doesn't smear people, or it shouldn't, outside of making a case in the court of law. So Higgins is right when he says innocent people are going to be hurt by this release. You might have victims' names revealed, but you might have people existing now under a pall of suspicion when one shouldn't exist. And this just isn't the way our system has to work. Now, again, my prayers on these files, as I think we'll see embarrassing information about some people we've heard about before, some that we haven't had connected to Jeffrey Epstein before. I think we'll see some more Larry Summers type cases. Larry Summers pathetically asking Epstein over emails for advice on how to conduct an affair with a mentee of his. Now, he's paid a terrible reputational price for that. Maybe he deserves that, but he didn't commit any crimes. And we'll see some more embarrassing information, I assume, about Donald Trump, because he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein for years before breaking off with him 15 or 20 years ago. But I think what we're unlikely to see is a massive pedophile ring that the government at the highest levels was covering up, or Donald Trump implicated in any of Epstein's crimes, because this case was investigated and prosecuted. Donald Trump's Justice Department, first term, prosecutes Jeffrey Epstein despite there being a non-prosecution agreement, a terrible agreement that was cut by Justice Department prosecutors years before. They go out of their way to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein. And then when he shows up dead in jail, then they could have let the matter go after that. Instead, they go and prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell. They didn't have to do this. And these prosecutors at the SDNY, the Office of Doing This, they hate sex offenders. There's no way they're giving a sex offender a pass just because he or she might be famous or influential. And two, they didn't like Donald Trump either. So if there's major disparaging information about Donald Trump that they were in possession of or aware of, it's almost a certainty it would have leaked to this point. So I doubt we're getting thermonuclear material from these files, but there's certainly people we don't know about who went to Epstein's island. Maybe they did something terrible there. Maybe they just went to the island, who are going to have to defend their reputations. We're going to have people likely in the Alan Dershowitz situation, falsely accused by one of the Epstein victims, had to spend years clearing his name. And to this day, even though he did clear his name to the satisfaction of any reasonable person, anyone who's not paying close attention just heard about Dershowitz and Epstein and assumes he was guilty of something. Now, I've heard Dershowitz say, well, other people should have to do what I did. They should have to work and go out of their way to clear their reputation and their good name. But that's not how the system is supposed to work. So I favor maximal transparency in keeping with our standard practices. Going to judges, saying this material should be released, and have the judges comb through it. The Justice Department, as a matter of fact, was already going through a lot of this material and providing it to the House Oversight Committee, but with a lot of review and care. And this vote suggests, no, Congress just wants it all willy-nilly. That's not how it's supposed to work. I don't think it's going to achieve their ends, except for Democrats will get a chance to embarrass Donald Trump some more and get some negative headlines that create assumptions or create presumptions about his guilt that are unjustified. And for them, of course, that's a great political benefit. But again, that's not how any of this is supposed to work. So with all of Washington going along, I hail the one guy who stood against it. Way to go, Clay Higgins. I'm Rich Lowry. Over and out.